Hi, everyone. Welcome to tonight's How To Academy event. Thank you for joining us here live or indeed at home on the live stream. Tonight, we are joined by best-selling author and legendary business thinker, Dan Pink. Daniel is the author of the New York Times bestsellers, Drive, To Sell is Human, and When. His books have sold millions of copies, have been translated into 42 languages, and have won multiple awards. Tonight, Daniel will explore the misunderstood emotion of regret and how we can transform our regrets into a positive force for working smarter and living better. Without further ado, please give a warm welcome to Dan Pink.
All right. Good evening. I am so glad to be here. I am so glad to be anywhere. So when the folks at How To asked me to come to this thing, I said, I will come here. I will, but only I drive a hard bargain because, as you can tell by my accent and my overconfidence, I'm an American, so I drive a very hard bargain. And I said, okay, I'll come here only on a few conditions. One, it has to be a very cold and rainy Tuesday night, and there must be some sort of public transit strike going on to make it difficult for people to get here. So I'm delighted that you were able to show up here. I appreciate your showing up. To the millions at home, hello. It's better here, but I'm glad you're watching from your living room or your office. So I'm excited to tell you about this latest basket of ideas, and I want to start with this photograph right here. Anybody know what that is? A studio, good, because that's a good call because it says studio right there. So you're on the right track. What kind of studio? Yes, who said that? Tell me your first name. Matt. Matt says it's a tattoo parlor. Okay, and so can you see what the name of that tattoo parlor is? No Regrets. it says No Regrets. This is a tattoo parlor in Cheltenham called No Regrets. It turns out. So think about a tattoo, okay? Getting a tattoo, that's a pretty significant commitment, right? It's not simply like putting like if I were to put a sticker on my computer here, expressing some point of view, that's a pretty minor commitment, right? And maybe you put a sticker on your car, that's a slightly bigger commitment. And maybe you wear a t-shirt, that's something of a commitment. But a tattoo is serious, right? I mean, that's a real commitment. You are inking something on your body permanently. And you have this tattoo called No Regrets. And I'm like, what the heck is going on here? Well, as I started researching regret, I found a shocking number of people who have this tattoo that says No Regrets. I met an American woman who had the tattoo No Regrets right here. I met a Brazilian guy who had the tattoo on his knee. I met a guy from Portugal who had the tattoo, No Regrets, on his forearm. I met a woman in Canada who had the tattoo on her rear end, No Regrets. So you think about that. We're like across multiple continents. It's all in English, okay? Nobody is saying it in other languages. They're saying No Regrets in no matter what language they speak, all over the world. This is a pretty popular philosophy, but don't just take the incredible commitment of inking it on your body. Listen to our public philosophers and what they have to say about this approach. So here is, should we go to a Nobel Prize winner? Want to hear from a Nobel Prize winner? Let's go hear from a Nobel Prize winner. Bob Dylan. I don't believe in regrets. Perhaps a future Nobel Prize winner. Angelina Jolie. I don't believe in regrets. Laverne Cox. I don't believe in regrets. Legendary moral philosopher John Travolta. I don't believe in regrets. So this is a pretty widespread point of view, that the idea that we shouldn't look back, that we should scrub regrets from our memory, that we should look forward, that we should be positive, that regrets make us weak, that having no regrets is a sign of strength and a sign of courage. And I am here to tell you that philosophy, again, out of the mouths of celebrities, out of the mouths of political leaders, on the arms and necks and buttocks of people around the world, that philosophy is complete bullshit. And I use that word very significantly. Because what is, can I say bullshit here? Okay, thank you. All right, good. I probably should have asked that in advance. Yeah, but yeah, let's just, we're among, it's so much, listen, it's so much better in here, all right? People are laughing really loudly. You might not be able to hear it at home, but they're loving it here. So, but let's think about what bullshit is. Bullshit is something that is untrue, but it is also dangerous, right? So you could have something that's not true, and it's like, okay, that's just ridiculous, right? But bullshit is actually dangerous, and that's what this philosophy is. Now, how do I know that, all right? Well, I'm going to tell you about the research. So I'm going to try to make the case to you that this philosophy is a colossally bad idea. But I want to show you how I make the case, all right? And so I want to just make one of the things that I believe is that when anybody, especially in a setting like this, where there's one person who is standing and a bunch of people who are sitting, and the person who is standing is literally elevated, all right? That you should approach any claims made from a position of elevation with what I like to think of as generous skepticism. Generous skepticism. So if I make a claim, or anybody up here makes a claim, you should say, how do you know? How do you know? All right? And so it's an epistemological question there. How do you know? I want to tell you how I know. I've spent the last few years researching regret. I want to tell you some of the research that I've done and sort of lay that out in advance and then make my case to you. So, how do I know? There is 60 years of academic research in this emotion of regret, in social psychology, in developmental psychology, in neuroscience. Second, I did what was the largest public opinion survey of only American attitudes about regret ever conducted. A sample of 4,489 Americans to try to understand in a quantitative way, what do Americans regret? And as you'll see in a moment, there is not a huge amount of national variation in what people regret. So we can at least make reasonable claims from that American quantitative sample about American attitudes about regret. But wait, there's more. The third leg of this epistemological stool is I've collected a lot of regrets from around the world. A lot. We'll come back to that in a moment. So that's how I know. Now, let's go back to our first leg of the epistemological stool. And I'm going to say epistemological many times because it's a really hard word to say, and I figured out how to say it. So, the science. Here's what the science tells us, 60 years of science. It tells us two things. It tells us two things about regret. Number one, regret makes us human. Regret makes us human. This is essential. Everybody has regrets. Everybody has regrets. The only people without regrets are 5-year-olds, because their brains haven't developed, because it takes a lot of cognitive dexterity to process regret. 5-year-olds, people with brain damage, and sociopaths. Everybody else has regrets. There is a pile of research starting in the 1980s showing that when you record people's conversations, or everyday conversations, and then you take the transcripts of those, and then you mark the emotions that are expressed, the most common negative emotion that people express is regret. The second most common emotion of any kind they express, discuss, talk about is regret. Second only to love. Love gets the gold, regret gets the silver in what people are talking about, the emotions they're expressing. So, everybody has regrets. They make us human. But wait, let's just make sure. So I decided to do something else with the second leg of the stool here. And so in this survey of 4,489 Americans, which was weighted to represent the glorious diversity of the United States of America, I asked people a question. But I asked people this question right here. How often do you look back on your life and wish you had done things differently? Now, that question is very carefully phrased. What do you notice about that question? I would assume, okay, that's a good point. That's a nice, who said that? Tell me your first name. Selena? Sanina. So Sanina says it assumes they do that. Okay, so here we go. Let's be Sherlock Holmes. What's the dog that didn't bark here? I don't say the word regret. I describe regret, but I don't do it. Why? Because I'm trying to bypass the fog machine of no regrets. So I'm going to describe the behavior, but I'm not going to use the R word. What happens then? So who wants? I mean, so what are your own answers to this question? How often do you look back on your life and wish you had done things differently? Daily. Okay. Tell me your first name. Paul. Paul. Okay. So we asked this question. Here we go. Here's what we got. Let's go to this. Never. 1%. Okay. Those are obviously the 5-year-old brain damaged sociopaths in the sample, right? Because we had a vast array. America's a vast country. We sample everybody. All right. Rarely. 16%. All right. Now, this is occasionally, frequently, and Paul. So you have you don't say the word, you have 83% of people saying they do this at least occasionally. Americans, and again, we're going to get to national variation here in a moment, because the story on national variation in regrets is that there isn't much. We'll come to that in a moment. Americans are much more likely to experience regret than they are to floss their teeth. It is a ubiquitous emotion. Now, let's go back here for a moment. Let's look at this. So, let's think about those people with tattoos. Here's a story from 2 years ago. 1 in 9 people who in the UK who have tattoos have undergone tattoo removal surgery, while 35% of those with tattoos have considered tattoo removal procedure. Tattoo removal is a $100 million a year business in the United States, because apparently people have regrets about getting tattoos, including a guy who I write about who joined the U.S. Army. He got a tattoo on his left arm that said "no regrets." 14 years later, he said, "I got some regrets." And he went to have it removed at an enormous cost. And he says, every time I go into the tattoo removal place and there's a new technician, I say, "I get it. The joke is not lost on me." All right? So, regret is ubiquitous. Now, let me give you a puzzle, all right? Regret is ubiquitous. It is one of our most common negative emotions, if not the most common negative emotions. We have quantitative evidence that it is widespread, at least in the American population. We have developmental psychology and neuroscience saying that not having regrets is a sign of sociopathy or a sign of brain damage. So this is kind of a puzzle, because is regret pleasant or unpleasant? It's unpleasant. It's terrible. I hate having regret. I hate feeling regret. It feels terrible, all right? So what's going on here? You have something that is unpleasant, and it's ubiquitous. It's hard to take, and it's harder to avoid. What's going on here? What's going on? Why is that the case? This would be the interactive part of the presentation. Why is that? Why? I don't know if anybody at home wants to shout from your living room. Why? Yes, it's right. Tell me your first name. Alex. Alex says it's for survival. Exactly. We are not masochists. We are programmed for survival, as Alex is saying. That's a lovely way to put it. Here's the way that 2 Dutch scholars put it. I like this phrasing here. People's cognitive machinery is pre-programmed for regret. Regret is part of our brains. It's part of who we are. It is an essential part of the human experience. Regret makes us human. Why does it makes us, because everybody has regrets. Why? Because if we treat it right, regret makes us better. Regret helps us. If we deal with our regrets properly, there is a pile of evidence showing that it has enormous effects across a range of different kinds of tasks. So, I won't torture you with all this science here because I have other stuff to torture you with, but regret can help us make better decisions. It can boost our performance on a range of tasks, and it can deepen our sense of meaning. There is research all over the place. Here's an example. Let's take negotiations. A lot of experiments, a lot of social psychology in negotiation, because you can take a common fact pattern, give people give parties the fact pattern, have them do a negotiation, but change the circumstances, the environment, to test different variables. So here's what it shows. Let's say you go into a negotiation, and maybe you haven't made it, you made it not a very good first offer. If you then think about, what do I regret in that negotiation? You invite this aversive experience. You don't say no regrets. You say, please come to me, regrets. I want to think about my regrets. You do better in the next negotiation. The same thing is true with a whole array of problem-solving tasks. You do a problem-solving task of any kind, you think about what you regret, you invite that small negative feeling, you do better next time. There's research showing that CEOs and other business leaders who acknowledge their regrets, confront their regrets, are better strategists than those who elide their regrets. Over and over again, what we find is this. Regrets make us human. Everybody has regrets. And done right, regrets make us better. Regrets make us better. Regrets are, in many ways, I think, one of our most powerful emotions. I think it's arguably our most transformative emotion because, as you're about to see, regret does two things that are essential. If we treat it right, I want to come back to that. Regret clarifies and it instructs. I want to say that again. Regret clarifies and it instructs if we deal with our regrets properly. The problem is that with regrets in particular and negative emotions in general, no one ever teaches us how to deal with them. No one ever teaches us how to deal with them. So sometimes we ignore them. We put our fingers in the ears. We buy the bill of goods that has been sold to us about no regrets, and we say, I'm having a negative emotion like regret. Blah, 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 blah. Emotions are real, all right? You drown it out. That's a very bad idea. That's a very bad idea. That leads to delusion. Now, what's a worse idea is to wallow in that, to get in a negative emotion and be captured by it, to bathe in it, to luxuriate in it, to describe it as the essence of who you are. That's an even worse idea. What we should be doing is we should be thinking about our regrets, confronting our regrets, using them as signals, using them as data. Not saying that there's some meaningless stranger walking down the street, and not saying that they are St. Peter at the gate evaluating our worth as a human being and whether we're going to fry in hell. We should be thinking about them, using them as data. Because if we do that, there are an array of benefits. So that's what a lot of the science says. I want to turn the corner here and talk about another aspect of this question, which is this. What do people regret? What sorts of things do people regret? Now, scholars and pollsters, mostly in the United States, have been asking that question since 1949. And what they found is a little bit perplexing. To give you a very, very short synopsis of this, initially, in America at least, they found that early on, most of the academic research showed that the people's biggest regret was in the realm of education. People had more education regrets than any other category. Then, after this point of view, after this opinion, after this conclusion settled into convention, somebody, raised their hand and said, wait a second. Do you think it might be because all the studies were done of American university students on college campuses? And they said, yes, that might be true. So a group of researchers in 2011, two researchers in 2011, said what we're going to do is we're going to do something more systematic. We're going to do what was called, it's not used, well, it's still used a little bit today, a random digit dialing poll of the American population to ask people what they regret. And they did this much more representative sample, and they found that people regret a lot of stuff. It's all over the place. They have regrets about their careers. They have regrets about their family. They have regrets about their romantic partners. They have regrets about their health. They have regrets about their finances. People regret a lot of stuff. It's a very unsatisfying conclusion. So, 10 years after that, I said, you know what? I'm going to crack this code. I'm going to figure this out of what people really regret. And so I did this very large survey, and I asked people their regret, and I had them slot it into one of those categories, thinking that, okay, we're going to push our understanding here. We thought it was mostly education regrets. Then we had this pretty good poll that showed it's a lot of stuff, but again, that was a sample of 300 something. I'm going to go out to an enormous sample of 4,489. We're going to weight it so that it perfectly represents the demography of the United States. I'm going to have people write their regret, put it into a category, all right? So I get the data in, I crunch the numbers, and I conclude that people regret a lot of stuff. It's all over the place. Some people have career regrets, some people have education regrets, some people have health regrets, some people have finance regrets, some people have romance. It's all over the place, all right? Very, very unsatisfying. But this is where the third leg of the stool helped me out quite a bit, because I also did something else. I did something called the World Regret Survey. The World Regret Survey. So, what I did is I set up a website, worldregretsurvey.com, and I asked people, tell me your biggest regret. And literally with a couple of tweets and not much else, we ended up with 15,000 regrets from around the world, and they keep coming in. You can actually go to the site and you can click on a country and say, you know, what do people in Indonesia regret? You can go to, you know, a U.S. state. What do people in Florida regret? A lot of stuff, apparently. But so right now we are over 18,000 regrets from people in 109 countries. 18,000 regrets from people in 109 countries. And I found that if you actually read through them, and I'm a glutton for punishment, so I've read through, I've read through the first 15,000. The latest ones, I haven't read all of them. When I read them, I noticed something very interesting. Around the world, people often use similar language. You hear the same phrases over and over again. And you hear phrases like speaking up. I wish I'd spoken up. I wanted to speak up, but I didn't. I wish I'd spoken up. I regret not speaking up. Interesting phrases. And those phrases span domains. So what I discovered in reading through these regrets and just listening to people tell me these stories, they're incredible little mini sagas of people's lives, is that there was something else going on that was actually way more interesting. That when I was asking what people regretted, at some level I was asking the wrong question and looking for the answer in the wrong place. I mean, otherwise I had it totally locked down. And so, but you see what I mean by that. That is, when you actually look at the qualitative leg of the stool, something really interesting was going on. And what I discovered is that around the world, over and over again, people seem to have the same 4 core regrets. The same 4 core regrets. I want to tell you what they are and give you some examples from this massive database. Almost all my examples I picked from the UK. So